Now we're going to switch gears and talk about the coronavirus in China because Canadian journalist Ethan Liu traveled to Beijing in January, back when the COVID-19 issue was barely registering in our minds here in North America. When his plane landed, it was a very different story. Ethan is the author of a new book called Field Notes from a Pandemic, and he joins us right now. Ethan, welcome to BT.
Morning. Hello.
Yeah, so when you landed in Beijing back in January, what were the first indications that the COVID-19 issue, which we were still referring to as the coronavirus generally then, that it was really becoming serious?
So the book begins right in the thick of it. And I think I am truly a man of extreme misfortune. When I left Toronto, there was no pandemic. And while I was in the air, cut off from the world, the epicenter city of Wuhan was sealed off, and I arrived into a new world. And if you can picture this, there's a long barrier after the baggage claim exit, and there's a long line of people just perched on the barrier. They are friends and family waiting to receive the travelers, and they're all looking at you, and every single one of them was wearing a mask. And this was before we were all wearing masks. It was like the comic book and movie V for Vendetta. And, just 14 hours ago, I entered the big metal tube in a normal world, and I just exited to the plague. And the book details how just everything escalated from there.
It was essentially a city under siege. What was going through your mind when you landed? Were you fearing for your own personal safety when this was going on?
Not so much, actually. And I think lots of young men just feel that they're indestructible. And so the reason for going to China was to see my grandfather. Throughout 2019, he had been in particularly bad health. And this is actually just in the first line of chapter 1. My father, at one point, he told me in these exact words to prepare a dark suit. So I think that was the thing that was on my mind. And I think at the end of the day, despite everything, I feel lucky to have went to China when I did, because while I was there with my grandfather, that was when the seniors' home, they banned all the visitors. So, and I will never forget that scene, I think. While my grandfather has very severe dementia, I think there's a baser part of the brain that's more primal and resilient, and I'm sure he could feel the tension in the people's voices, the heaviness of their footsteps, and the cold emptiness of the room. And as I was getting ejected, I was holding his hand, and as I was letting go, he held on with all the strength that he could muster.
Wow, unbelievable. Now, Ethan, being in Beijing in those days, what do you think the rest of the world can learn from China's response to COVID-19?
I think that the way I look at it, I don't really see that as an East-West divide. And I think China did some good things and also made a lot of mistakes. And they were no different from the rest of the world. So this book, through a travel log, it looks at how the pandemic will affect the world. And part of it deals with not only how hard it is to see this coming, but also how inevitable this is. In 2018, the White House dismantled a unit dealing with pandemics, and it's a story repeated all over the world. And China itself, they were caught flat-footed by this as well, but China reacted quickly. But that is not unique to China. I think New Zealand did a good job as well, and Canada, compared to parts of the world, it's not bad as well. But when we look at what happened in the United States, I think we see just chaos and stupidity. And I think at the heart of everything is people's faith in the government. The countries that move quickly, Western democracies, if we look at them, New Zealand, they move quickly because the government can command the people's trust, whereas in the US, people's trust in the government, it's a pitiful 17%. And you can clearly see the difference in the result.
One of the key themes in the book is that we live in an increasingly integrated society, how we're all digitally connected and the information travels so fast these days. And that can be really hard with respect to global travel when dealing with a pandemic. So how do you think in some areas the fabric of society itself will have to be reimagined as we go through this and deal with pandemics down the road?
So in one of my chapters, I write about what I think is quite a neat fact. So that there was a man who wanted to build a toaster from scratch. and he tried it. He wrote a book about it, but he failed miserably at building that toaster because a simple toaster sells for maybe $12. It requires 400 different components sourced from all over the world. And one of the reasons this hit us so badly, worse than SARS, is because China's economy now, it's 4 times more integrated with the world than it was during the days of SARS. So now I think the book writes that small ripples, they can become big tidal waves. And I think at the end of the day, after all this, many countries, they're going to rethink how they have sourced supplies from all over the world. Companies are going to do rethinking, and supply chains are going to be moved domestically. And we are sacrificing a lot of efficiency and price, but what we gain from that is more resiliency.
Ethan, the book is Field Notes from a Pandemic. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Oh, it's an absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, you have a great day. That's Canadian journalist Ethan Liu, and the book, once again, Field Notes from a Pandemic. Coming up much